Sally is now the director of the Mississippi Broadband office. Is this a long-term thing, or is it a temporary? And what were you told when you took this job?
That it's a long-term temporary assignment.
It's a long-term temporary assignment. And then you looked up that in the thesaurus and the dictionary, and I'm not sure if you found it, but the new appointment to the head of the BEAM office. Now, you've only been there several weeks, but I'm interested, what does the office do? What's the mission statement? And just kind of fill us in on this.
So this office was created by some legislation in this past session, effective after passage, and the governor appointed me last week. And we're going to operate under the Department of Finance and Administration. And there is a tremendous amount of federal grant money coming to Mississippi and coming to every state in the nation from the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And so it will be the responsibility of this office to be that one center point, that point of contact for all things broadband in Mississippi. We will administer those funds, apply for the grants that will be under that funding, solicit applications for those grants, and apply for them, and then administer those grants.
So does that mean all of those funds, and again, that's ARPA funds and others, will be funneled through your office and they have to come to there first?
They will, and that's really a national priority that has been talked about a lot, hopefully to prevent overbuilding, prevent duplication of services. They want every state to have a point of contact, and I believe we are one of the last states to stand up our Office of Broadband. But now we're ready to go.
So this office does mirror other states what they have?
Yes, for sure.
But was it something that was mandatory on the federal side of this? Or
not mandatory, but highly suggested.
Yeah. So all the RFPs have got to come through your new office, and it's called BEAM, B-E-A-M, the Mississippi Broadband Office. That BEAM stands for what? Broadband
Expansion and Accessibility of Mississippi.
Got it. I will log that in here. So I'm curious as to, because a lot of these are the local municipalities are putting additional money in there and matching it with this. So how does that work? I mean, does the whole thing have to come through, or what?
All of this money will flow through the large pots of money. It's really federal money, and so I think some localities might use some of their ARPA funds as match for this. The different grant programs under these funds have different requirements as far as matching from local communities or from internet service providers or whomever is applying for the grant.
Sally, what's the deadline on this now? When it is not too late, but what is the deadline? I wouldn't think it's too
we
late.
are just getting started.
Okay.
There are different buckets of money. So the first bucket of money is $162 million in the Capital Projects Fund, and that is out of ARPA, and that's different than the ARPA money that the legislature appropriated. You know, our Mississippi legislature appropriated $1.8 billion, I believe, in ARPA funds. I don't know if they ever got it all appropriated, but that's how much they had to spend.
Was the 162 titled ARPA? This was not ARPA money. Okay.
It is ARPA money, yes, but it's separate than what the state received in that was appropriated by the legislature. Okay. So it's a separate pot, $162 million. It is the Capital Projects Fund. The deadline for us to submit a plan, for the state of Mississippi to submit a plan as to how we're going to use that money, and that's not the specifics yet. That is just, we plan to do so much fiber, so much fixed. You know, we have to submit our plan to the feds by September of 2022. I would hope that we could do that a little bit earlier, maybe midsummer.
Yeah. When you say we, who is we?
BEAM. BEAM.
So you have to do it. So you have to get all that information in from the municipalities. Is it municipalities and counties? Or?
We're going to be talking to all municipalities and counties and all service providers.
Well, by the time you talk about that, September 22nd is going to be here before you know it.
And there's a lot more, too.
Yeah, we'll try to explain this because this is very, very important.
It is.
To all of the municipalities out there. When you talk about the need, the financial thirst out there to get the infrastructures, certainly the underground water systems across the state. It's so important. Sally will kind of put it in simplistic terms, and we'll try to figure this out together. So live from the Trustmark studios. One size does not fit all. That's why Trustmark offers checking accounts that do fit your needs to a T, as in Trustmark. People you trust, advice that works. Member FDIC. Director of Mississippi Broadband Office, Beam, Sally Doty here. And now, let me give you a recap. First pot of money on her desk would be part of the ARPA fund that's $162 million pot. It's 420, so we just blend everything together.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Capital Broadband Fund, and the deadline is September 22nd. It's a loose deadline of just bullet points, or what?
Yeah, right. It is our deadline. It is not anyone else's deadline. It is it's Beam's deadline to submit a plan to the NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. And they will make sure that our plan looks good moving forward. Then we will solicit grants and applications. And we're going to have information. We are just now getting started. We don't have a physical location yet. We don't have a phone number, an email, a computer. We are getting all those things together right now. But just as soon as we have everything, we're going to be very transparent. Everything is going to be up, all information. From our last segment, I was really worried that every mayor in the town of Mississippi, in every small town mayor in Mississippi, was going to be calling me. So you don't need to call me yet. Let us get going. But that is our first deadline.
This is your deadline, not their deadline.
That is our deadline. That is the agency's deadline.
From what questions are you going to have answered by September 22nd to meet your deadline?
Well, it is how we're going to structure that grant and how those funds are going to be awarded. But Paul, I think what is even more exciting, that is, I said that is the first pot of money.
Right.
Then there is more money that is coming to Mississippi and to every state from the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. There was $65 billion set aside for broadband projects and infrastructure, and of that, $45 billion is in a plan called the BEAD, and I think it's also Broadband Expansion and Accessibility Development, BEAD, which sends money to every state, and that money is going to flow down to the states based on a formula. Based on your unserved and underserved locations. We really expect Mississippi to do well it's terrible to do well because you have so many unserved and underserved, but that's probably what's going to happen.
Well, being a rural state, that would normally...
We are.
But that has nothing to do with the 1.8. That has nothing to do with the 1.8 billion.
No,
or is that
no.
That's
it is
another
totally
one.
separate. Totally separate. So there's the 162 million. That's from ARPA. Then this other that is part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act.
You don't know. We don't know how much that is right now.
We don't know how much that is, but we really expect it to be close to $1 billion.
$1 billion, in addition to the $1.8 billion in other ARPA funds.
But that $1.8 billion was for water, sewer, all those other infrastructure projects. This is money that is solely dedicated for broadband.
Okay. You're not allocating anything other than broadband?
That's it.
On this one from your office. Your office is specifically for broadband. So
yes.
The mayors don't need to be talking to you about water lines and things such as that?
No, not at all.
What do they need, Sally? What do they need to do right now? I mean, as we said here on the 20th of April, what do they need to do?
So this is what we need to do as a state. Right now, that, as I said, that money's going to be given out determined by your unserved and underserved locations. So the feds right now are working on a new map. We've heard in the past, Senator Wicker has been an advocate for Mississippi in talking about how the FCC maps that are out there right now are incorrect. They'll show, an area served that is unserved. We all know that. So there is a new mapping effort that the federal government is undertaking. But in addition to that, we are going to do our own map in Mississippi. Most other states are doing that as well. So when that new federal map comes out, that we have all of our information and we can say, oh, you say this is covered, but really this area around Lawrence County is not covered, or we can challenge that map. So that is what we are going to do in the next couple of months. We're going to have some folks in to help us. We're going to put out an RFP for that mapping project. And we're going to get our own Mississippi map. And so we are probably going to need some community help in getting that done, whether it is the tax assessor, because don't you know they're the best at finding everyone in Mississippi.
Yeah.
So we're going to need some help from our community leaders as we go through that mapping process.
How are you going to quantify projected plans in that area, maybe see even some plans under contract to not going to be served in the future? In other words, that are underserved, but those that are contract to be served. How do you do that?
We have undergone some internal mapping at the public utilities staff where I am now. We have a telecom division, and also we've had a lot of responsibility in broadband. So we've been able to have our own internal map that shows where federal money has come down in rural areas. And really that's the way broadband has been expanded in Mississippi, because those rural areas are so high cost. I mean, it doesn't make business sense, so there has to be some additional monies. So we've been able to come up pretty much with our own map. And that is the purpose of a broadband office, is so you'll have a central location who can keep up with where all of those projects are. Very importantly, in the bill as well that passed through the legislature, provided some exemptions from the Open Records Act. So we can get the different plans from the internet service providers who will be participating in this. And kind of see, where they are and maybe where they plan to be. And then I think it's going to make sense. I'm sure we'll have to, negotiate a lot, but I think it's going to make sense as to who is going to serve what areas.
When you say who's going to serve, you
what
talking
providers?
About what company's going to do that?
What providers? Is it going to be a co-op? Is it going to be C-Spire? Is it going to be one of our rural telephone companies, Franklin Telephone Company down in my area that's kind of related to
That will also
C-Spire.
be done on an RFP basis?
So
in other words,
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
If there's an open area there and nobody wants it, I mean, you can't dictate a company to mandatorily do it.
Correct.
So, how do you fill that void?
So I think there's going to be incentives. There's federal money for all of those voids, for those unserved. So I do. I think we'll identify these different areas and then we'll, almost put it out for bid, who's going to serve this area. And that's what the feds did with RDOF, if you've heard, I know you've heard of that, which was the Rural Development Opportunity Fund. I might have that acronym a little bit wrong, but Mississippi did really well. It was an auction of different areas of the state that the FCC did back about a year and a half ago. And Mississippi did really well. We got $450 million in that RDOF process. But still, it's not enough to cover all these unserved areas in the state. And some of that RDOF money is just now coming down to the state. There were some additional approvals that had to be made, and some of it will never come because the companies bid on it, but then they could not pass maybe some of the rest of the application process. So it's very important for one entity in the state to be keeping up with all of that, to be, subject matter experts in that area and be able to know what areas in our state are going to need this broadband funding.
You have a monumental task of just gathering data.
It is.
And I don't envy you for that, because it's critical in your particular situation. And you've got to do that not only from the municipalities, but also the Board of Supervisors, I would imagine, or the APAs out there.
Yeah, and I will say, I served about 9 years in the legislature, and that really is beneficial to me because I've got a lot of relationships around the state. I know that there's a Supervisors Association and a Chancellor Clerks Association. I'm familiar with all the EPAs, so I think it's going to be. I'm going to enjoy talking to people across the state, and really. We need to all work together to get this done. It's a wonderful opportunity for our state.
Final thoughts on this one, and again, we'll talk one more time about what you as a municipality or an EPA or a company or whatever, what you need to do now and kind of a timeline. And I'm sure we'll have more and more meetings to keep you guys informed about this on a statewide basis. Sally Doty, Director of Mississippi Broadband Office. Final thoughts coming up next.
Thank you.
Let's get back with Sally Doty and final thoughts here. Somebody mentioned on C-Spire text line that they have just gotten Starlink in a very, very rural area. Does this have anything is this all fiber optics?
fiber is
as far as
preferred in this. Yes.
Yeah. But it has nothing to do with the satellite on as far as broadband.
Well, I think Starlink's going to be important in some areas, and in fact, Starlink did win some money in RDOF, but I don't think they've been approved to receive that RDOF money yet. But Starlink is a different type of service. Fiber is really the gold standard. I was reading a little bit this morning about Starlink. Right now there are 2,000 satellites in orbit around the Earth. Starlink proposes to have 30,000 just for Starlink. So while they are up and running somewhat now, I think they're still working on their business model and how it's going to be provided. But fiber is really the gold standard, and I think will be for the next 10, 15 years.
Some of the area is so rural, it just meets that financial common sense where you have to string fiber optics a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles to reach 1, 2, or 3. And it's just, it's it'd be great for the future, but sometimes it's just eating up a lot of money for a little service. And then it would seem to me that that's when Starlink or any satellite service would be apropos for that situation.
That's what we want to look at because we want to use our money judiciously. And so this money is for unserved and underserved. And I think a lot of Mississippi, a lot of our small towns, larger towns, even parts of the city of Jackson are going to qualify as underserved. So if we can take care of those unserved people the most efficiently and economically as we can, then we can move on to underserved.
Do we have any idea certainly when you start talking about underserved or impoverished areas, what the cost factor is going to be for this? Do we know?
We think that it's around, sometimes it's about $2,000 a house for a build-out for fiber. That's just a very, what we've kind of gathered from the different programs that we've administered.
But that's got to be as far as
Are you talking about the cost? What are you talking about?
How much? At one point, it was costing a set amount of money to lay fiber per mile.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what that is now.
It does. One of the big problems is actually getting the fiber where there's such supply chain issues. So as we're going to try to move forward with this build out as quickly as we can, but there are some supply issues that are going to really be a challenge.
Have you been able to see what part of the state is the most underserved right now?
I think the Delta is the most underserved.
It is.
Yes.
Across the Delta area.
Yes, it is.
So one more time to the Board of Supervisors, to the municipalities, everybody else, where we are right now with this new office is where?
We are getting organized, and we are getting ready to map the state. That is our first project, and then we will have different grant opportunities that are available that will be up on our BEAM website when we get that done just as quickly as we can. But we're going to be engaging in mapping, and we are going to be contacting them. I will be contacting them. I think in the meantime, anybody who's listening, we want as much data out there as possible. You can go to this speedtest.com that is on everybody's phone. A lot of people use it. Speedtest.com, and that gives data out there as to what speeds you're getting. That's a company called Ookla that runs that, and I'm sure we'll be using that data. So that we will contact you, counties, municipalities, because we're going to need your help in getting some speed tests and defining what areas need help in your community.
I've got one on my phone, and I still have to ask what it means, but is there any number that they should be looking for? Can you give them that as far as on the speed?
Yeah, so underserved is below 25.3. 25.3 is the DSL that we all had. So 25.3 and below is basically, in our way we use it now, it's really almost is unserved.
Yeah.
So so that is what you're looking at.
So anything over 25.3. Is a little bit better, but anything below that.
Yeah.
All right. You have a website that you're keeping
we're
people.
We're going to. We don't have it just yet. I was appointed.
Do you have an office?
I don't have an office yet.
I was going to say the reason she was late is she was doing bookkeeping in her car.
That's it. Yeah, so I'll be moving over from the public utilities staff where I currently am, and we've really been doing a lot of that and are doing that out of that office. But we'll be moving over to our own office so we can, focus on broadband and wake up every day thinking, what is it that we can do to make this process move faster and to get more connectivity out to Mississippians?
If there is, somebody asked me on C Spire, if somebody does put an RFP in there and there's something that needs to be corrected and everything else, will there be some latitude where they can make those corrections and still get it back to you?
I feel sure, yes.
Yeah. Would you return when you need to and keep us informed on this?
I certainly will. I will be in touch because we are going to need some help from the people of Mississippi.
We are here. Thank you, Sally. Appreciate it.
Wait till she gets in office first.
I know.
Well, that's true, or else that Mustang's going to be busy with all of those folders in the back seat.
It's going to be all over the state.